Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Kate, as you all already know. In fact, you might not all already know because some of you might be new viewers to the channel, so welcome. And if you are one of those people that's new, please remember to hit the subscribe button because then you get the pleasure of being notified about all the content that I put out. And that isn't just these types of videos. I've got a LinkedIn live show called Recruitment Uncensored that runs fortnightly. You can watch that live or you can watch and stream them after. And I post regular shorts as well. So definitely hit the subscribe button. I would massively appreciate it. So today we're continuing with part 3 of a recent course of videos that I ran or have been running around adapting your behaviours to suit your clients. Now, there's been a bit of a gap between the first two because there's been some other videos I wanted to throw out there. But I'm continuing with this now because I am a real true believer in this being a massive key to unlocking the challenges we face around winning clients. And I find a lot of the time when I talk about this subject, in some circles, it's kind of seen as a bit airy-fairy and not really real, but it is. We deal with people, they're all different, they've got their different ways of viewing the world and their different priorities and perceptions. And look, at the end of the day, we're not psychic, but if we've got the tools in our box to be able to read them better so we can adapt and understand ourselves better so we can modify and adapt easier, then it's a no-brainer for me. Why wouldn't you want to do it? So I'm going to highlight the same thing I highlighted at the start of my last video. You're watching this video because ultimately you want to change and you want to improve part of how you do your job, the service you provide, which is great and you're in the right place. But remember that things will only change if you put what you hear today into practice. So everything you learn, go out and do it. Little things along the way. Or I always say, doing something is better than nothing. Try your best and just go out there and see what happens. And as you grow and develop, you will find that things become easier and easier as you form new habits. Now I've done my little preach for the start of the video, let's get going with today's behaviour type, which in DISC we call S's. And the main word we use to describe them is the word steady. And we always use the colour green. So if you ever want to differentiate between the others, you'll notice with the D's, I was using the colour red, yellows was I, S's, green. So the words that we use to describe S's are things like steady, stable, sensitive, sentimental, security seeking, and they're the types of people that like the status quo. So they're just some of the typical words that we use to describe them. Now, if I was gonna describe to you an S-type person in one way, it would be team before self. And that is quite a good way to spot people with this behaviour in their profile because they are very much the types of people that are always thinking of others before them. Very team orientated. What effect will it have on the team? Will they like that decision? They want harmony within the team. They want everybody to get along, but they like to involve others. And they're actually very sensitive to the needs of other people as well. So put them in a room full of people. If somebody's not themselves, they will spot it. And they will be the types of people to go up and one-on-one address it. Are you okay? They always want the other person to be okay before their own needs. So if you have a client, for example, that is very much always wanting to know, how will this affect the rest of my team? How did they feel after the interview? Did they like us? Would they like to work for us? They're very self-sacrificing, then they probably will have this part in their profile. S's are more reserved people. People focused, but more reserved, which isn't anything to do with them being shy necessarily. It's about pace at which they work. So they know that it's a marathon, not a sprint. S's don't feel the need to rev that engine and go quicker. So one way to probably spot if you've got an S-style decision maker or manager that you're trying to win around. So a good example of this would be, you might have sent your terms over and asked them to come back to you ASAP, but they may have something going on with their team, something that they value as being more important, maybe a team member's upset about something. That is going to come first before your deadline for the terms, because they're thinking of the other person and they know they'll get the terms done for you eventually, but it's about that loyalty to their member of staff and not rushing things. And if you try to rush them, they will resist and they will push back. One thing that I will say about people with S in their profile is they can be a little bit stubborn. If they have a belief about something, even if you tell them that it's not true, factually, if it's not true, they won't change their mind easily. They're very set in their ways. They like things to be as they are. Change is not a comfortable thing for them. I'm going to come to that later. But I was talking about how they like the status quo. They like to come into work, things to be as expected. They come in, they do their job, they go home. And if they have an opinion around something, it takes a lot of time to change it. And this is particularly important to remember when we are trying to win clients. We've had the objection before, we don't use agencies. They may have a bad opinion of agencies. They may have had a terrible experience. Changing their mind, you can do it. But don't expect for it to happen overnight, because if this is part of their behavioural profile, they won't make that decision quickly. If it is an ingrained belief and that is what they feel, then they can be quite stubborn around it. S's are amazing listeners, and they will very much be the types of people, if you are in a conversation with them, even when they're a client, they'll be very good actually at listening to what you have to say, and very sensitive to the fact that even if maybe they don't want to take your business development call, oh, you know what, I'm going to give them a chance, I'm going to let them speak, and I'm not going to interrupt, and I'm going to entertain the conversation. Inside, they might be thinking, I really have other things to do, but they're not necessarily the type of person to vocalise, like the D's and the I's, and the D's particularly, look, I'm busy, I can't speak to you, because they won't want to upset you. So again, they're very self-sacrificing, but they are great listeners. So when you have them on board as a client, in terms of adapting and remembering who they are, they'll be great listeners, but you also need to reciprocate that as well. Because they put other people before them and they're great listeners and they're very sensitive, they'll be expecting the same back from you. So remember that when you are dealing with them, to listen, which you should be doing anyway, but be sensitive and empathetic to their needs and their feelings. They will be the types of people that can get offended a little bit more easily than you might. So my sister has a lot of S in her profile. She may ask me a question like, would you like to come over for tea at the weekend? And my go-to with my preferred communication style is to just say no. Now there'll be a good reason around that, but I won't necessarily give what I call the fluffiness around it. She needs that to know that I'm not in a mood with her. I'm not upset. It's not that I don't want to see her. I've got other plans. So remember that you need to be sensitive to the fact that they will want you to think about them, the relationship you've got with them, and be a bit softer in your communication. Now, when we're thinking about, I've talked a lot about how you speak to them, right? But we know that when we're dealing with clients, we're not just speaking to them on the phone, we're emailing them, LinkedIn messages, especially when we're trying to win them over as clients. There could be a variety of outreach methods that we're using, voice notes even. So one thing to remember when you're communicating with S's, and I've kind of just touched on it, you need to add the niceties. You need the, how are you, how was your weekend, stuff at the start. And remember the things they've told you about themselves and bring them up in other conversations. S's are very, very family orientated. They really care about those close to them. So if they've dropped in things about their kids or what they're getting up to on their holiday, when you next speak to them, oh, how are your kids? How was your trip? What did you get up to? They will absolutely love it. They'll really appreciate you listening to them and showing that you care about the same things, that value. And share your own family experiences or the things you've got in common, because they'll really appreciate somebody on the same level as them. Okay, so like I've done with the other two videos, we're now going to go into the fears that S's tend to have. And I've kind of touched on these already. One is rapid change. So I'm not saying that they'll never be able to change, but it's the rapid change that they're not comfortable with. So what you've got to remember when you're trying to bring on a client with S as part of their profile, you are going to need to bear that in mind, because if they've used the same agency for years, they could be doing a shit job, but changing for them rapidly in this call, in the moment, now is when I want to start working with you, is, whoa, this is too much for me here. Slow things down. They also don't like a loss of security, and these things feed into each other. So you need to make things feel safe and secure and explained at timescales agreed and not rush things. And this comes into everything. Rapid change around recruitment processes that you might want to introduce to help them. You know, how they interview. But working with you in itself is a change if you're trying to win this customer. So you have to bear that in mind. Of course, we want to sign that client up quickly, but you need to bear in mind that that may make them feel really uncomfortable. And that's why they might be resisting giving you that yes. And it's being appreciative of that and not pushing too much. Now, loss of security, that can be around a number of things. Now, it could be around adding a new person to the team, a new personality, a different type of person to what they normally hire. You know from your conversations with them that it's what they really need, but it's different. And it will bring, again, rapid change, but maybe a loss of security for that manager. So you've got to bear all of that in mind massively. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my God, this is me, this might explain to you a lot of the ways that are reasons that you react in certain ways to people and your clients, and how you can modify and adapt your behaviour as well. Now, what S's are motivated by kind of feeds into a little bit of what we've just talked about around the fears. So they're motivated by security. So it's important that, remember I said S's are very loyal. If you give that back, if you give them that feeling of security, I can rely on this recruitment consultant. They bring security, they bring results, they make me feel safe, helping and supporting. That's going to give them that security. And that may be initially when you're trying to win them, you giving them things like stories and facts and testimonials around how you've helped people that makes them feel more secure. What they also get motivated by is peace and harmony. What they won't want is dramas and ups and downs and too much direct, fiery communication. They want peace and harmony. Relationships and people are very important to them. So things like, you and another agency arguing over a CV that's been sent, who sent it first. They want peace and harmony. They won't want you going at each other. It's about finding a peaceful and harmonious resolution. One thing to bear in mind with that is that sometimes, because they want peace and harmony, they won't address things that need to be addressed that they're not happy with. And sometimes they won't tell you when they're not happy with something. So it's creating a safe space where you give them that opportunity to open up and they feel like they won't upset you, or you won't then go into attack mode. So it's really important that if you feel that a client has got this in their behavioural style, when you win them as well, you need to keep checking in, see if they're happy. But as your conversations are growing, get them to open up about what do you like about the agencies that you work with, what maybe doesn't work for you. They might not tell you in that first conversation, but keep bringing it up. It will make them feel safe to do that, but also around the way that you're dealing with them, how your relationship is going. What's working for you? What do you like about the way we speak together? What could I do differently that would make you feel better? Those types of things. Their method of control is slowing things down. I talked about earlier, if you try and speed them up, they're going to put the brakes on even more. And that's one big tip I can give you here, is if you're trying to win over this type of client, you've got to adapt to the pace that they work to. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes we do need to speed things up for very good reasons, but you need to communicate that and in enough time for them to get their head around it. So what I would suggest is when you are bringing on that client, so when you're having those initial BD conversations, talk about the fact that, for example, one of the things that you really do well is get quick results for them in terms of CVs over quickly. A lot of the candidates that you work with, they're in high demand. And what that can mean is that they have other things going on. So you will always tell them when that candidate has other things going on, so they're aware, but also you'll advise on how quickly they need to move. And sometimes we'll have time, sometimes we won't have much time. But how do they ask them? How do you feel about me making you aware of these timescales? And then asking them, how able are you to move quicker and speed up your process if it's needed? Because that gets them in the thought process already of, okay, this might happen, I need to expect it, and if it happens, this is why. Otherwise, if you just spring these things on them, they'll go into oh my God mode and really slow things down, and then you are in a pickle. Their value to any organisation is their team mentality. So you can really play on this. Foster a team mentality between the two of you from those very initial conversations to winning that client, Adapt to the fact that they want to be a team with you, a partnership, not a us and them type thing. You want to integrate with their team. You want to be part of their organisation, live by their values. You want to be a consultant that works alongside them. All these types of things, if you say all these types of things, it's music to their ears, and they will love hearing you understand that that's important to them. On the flip side, ask them things like, tell me about your team. What are they like? Who are your best performers? What do you love about the team that you manage at the moment? How would you change up the team, or what would you do differently to create more harmony and get better results? You know, they really care about the team, so ask them questions about the team and show that you value that as well. Because again, it shows, oh, we can relate here. I like you. You know, I feel safe and secure. I'm going to keep going back to those words because it's a huge thing for S's. You might remember that in the first video, when we talked about D's, I said they're the easiest to spot. One thing I will say is that S's are probably the hardest to spot. It's the most common behaviour in most people's profiles, because most people are not an extreme of anything. They're, you know, middle of the road, and you know, S's like the status quo, and they don't want to necessarily stand out. They like to just, you know, bob along and just be left to get on with whatever they want to get on with. But as a result, they can be harder to spot, or this part of their profile can be harder to spot. If I was going to give you one tip, the easiest way to spot them is their resistance to change, the stubbornness around it. So keep that in mind when you're trying to work out these prospective clients. But that is all for today's video. Keep your eyes peeled for the last in the series, the 4-part series. We're going to go onto the last behaviour, and then you can bring all of it together, watch all 4, and start noticing the blends in people as well. So really excited for you to watch the next one. Get in touch if you have any questions. Connect with me. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, on all levels. The content I share across these different platforms is different. If you're particularly nosy, I'd follow me on Instagram, because that really is an unfiltered view into my life, not just my work life, my personal life as well. Hit that subscribe button, keep watching guys, and I will see you very, very soon. Thank you.